again, 2 or 3 types of problems, and then I'll show you like, okay, the third type of problem is basically if I took number 1 and instead of saying 2u, I said u over 2. Okay, so the directions would just change. It says use the half angles, that kind of stuff, and then we'll talk about what you would do if that was that case. So it says find the exact values of sine 2u, cosine 2u, and tangent 2u, given that sine is -4/5 and that u is in between pi and 3 pi over 2. So remember with these, you set up your triangles, right? I don't know anything about an angle, which means I'm setting up a triangle. The sine would be the opposite over the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is always positive, so I know the sine makes that the -4. But then I need that second piece of information to tell me that when I put that 3 on the missing side, is that 3 positive or negative?
3 negative.
Good. And why?
Because tan has to be positive because it's in the third quadrant.
It's in the third quadrant, right? Third quadrant, both the x and the y are negative. So this would be a -3, or -3 on that missing side. So then when I go to find the sine of 2u, and the little corner there, I mean, it's hard for you to see right now because it's so small, but that's exactly what it's going to look like on your quiz. All those formulas are just in that format. So if you want to start to even like memorize where they are, doubles in the top left, right? Quicker we can do it, the better. Halves in the top right, and then the unit circles on the bottom. So this would be 2 sine of u, cosine of u. So 2, using the triangle, my sine would be -4/5, and my cosine would be -3/5. 2 times 4 is 8, times 3 is 24, and it's a positive 24 because they're both negative. And then 5 times 5 is 25. So that's the sine of 2u. Easy stuff, right? Oh. It's okay. The location of the angle. So because that angle is in between pi and 3 pi over 2, it means it's in the third quadrant. And in the third quadrant, both the x, which is the horizontal, and the y, which is the vertical, are negative. Okay, you're good. You're welcome. All right, and then cosine. So again, you can choose between those cosine formulas. All 3 of them are there. Okay, I tend to pick the first just because once you square them, they already have the same denominator, but it doesn't matter. It's totally up to you, your preference. So I'm going to do cosine squared minus sine squared. Cosine would be -3/5. Sine would be -4/5. Square them. I get 9/25 minus 16/25, which is -7/25. That's your cosine. Questions on that one? Okay, and then the last one was tangent. So the tangent, again, the formula is right there. 2 tangent over 1 minus tangent squared. 2 times the tangent, which is -4 over -3, or 4/3. Over 1 minus 4/3 squared. So I get 8/3 in my numerator. 1 minus, this becomes 16/9. So this is 9/9 minus 16/9, which is -7/9. And then I would just do keep, change, flip. This one's negative. 9 goes into 3, or 3 goes into 9 3 times, and I get -24 over 7. And again, like had you found the sine and the cosine, you could have found the tangent based on sine over cosine, but these are going to be independent. You're only going to get one of those 3, so just make sure you would know how to do them individually. Okay. So again, for this one, for the half angles, we do, based on the half angle, you pick the positive or negative. But then every other piece of information is based on the double angle. So I have to double the 157.5 to get 315. And then when I go to find the sine, I'm doing the square root of 1 minus the cosine of 315 over 2. And at the end, I'm going to make sure that I keep it positive. For the cosine, I'm going to do 1 plus the cosine of 315 over 2. And in the end, I'm going to make sure that there's a negative on the front of that parenthesis, or the front of the square root. So the 315 is 1, right? 315. I'm going to give you your unit circle. 315 is, it's over there, right here. Okay, which is root 2 over 2 and negative root 2 over 2. Uh-oh. Get you back there. So I'd get 1 minus root 2 over 2 over 2. I change the 1 to 2 over 2. I combine them so they have the same denominator. They're all over 2. I do keep, change, flip. And I get root 2 minus root 2 over 4, which splits into square root of 2 minus root 2 over 2. And again, I keep it positive because we said the sign of 157.5 would be positive. We okay on that? Okay, so then the cosine would be exactly the same except there's a plus in between. So I'm going to kind of hurry through it, but make sure that you would know how to do it because you're not going to have both. You're just going to have one of them. So this is going to be negative 1 plus root 2 over 2 over 2. That 1 becomes 2 over 2, so I get 2 plus root 2 over 2 over 2. Keep, change, flip. It becomes 2 plus root 2 over 4. And then that splits to be root 2 plus root 2 over 2. And it's negative because we said that the cosine of 315, the cosine of 157 would be negative. And then we do tangent. So again, tangent you can pick either formula. So how many of you use the first one, out of curiosity? How many of you use the second one? Okay, so we'll do first. 1 minus cosine over sine. So 1 minus root 2 over 2 over a negative root 2 over 2. This becomes 2 over 2. And I get 2 minus root 2 over 2 over negative root 2 over 2. Keep, change, flip, and I get negative 2 over root 2. The 2's cancel, and this becomes 2 minus root 2 over negative root 2. So you can't lose that negative. So then I'd have to rationalize by multiplying both the top and the bottom by square root 2. You could do negative square root 2, but it doesn't matter as long as you keep the negative. Distribute this, 2 root 2 minus 2, and then negative root 2 times root 2 would be negative 2. And then this goes in here, negative 1 times, and negative 1 times is going to make that a positive 1. And I get negative root 2 plus 1. So if you actually did your homework, you have practiced this at least 10 times, this should not be that bad. And you should start to see that, like, they kind of repeat. There's only so many options on your unit circle. You're dealing with root 2s or root 3s or all that stuff, the same thing over and over again.
Why was cosine negative?
Because 157, which is my half angle, which is what I'm trying to find, is in the second quadrant, in which cosine would be negative.
So the restriction is like